Listen, when
It's
there's
killed
a bomb...
36,000 Palestinians.
Oh, well, that's what you say. Apparently, you know the numbers better than the UN and
the fire
the
that
army
raged through
and
that
everyone
refugee
else.
camp did that damage
Was
to that
tragic.
baby.
Today, we're diving into a heated debate from Piers Morgan's show featuring Wajahat Ali and Fleur Hassan Nahum. Wajahat Ali, a vocal critic of Israel's occupation, doesn't hold back on calling out the devastating impact on Palestinian civilians. On the other side, Fleur Hassan Nahum, a prominent Israeli official, defends Israel's actions, arguing they're fighting a war on terror. This conversation pulls back the curtain on the harsh realities behind the numbers we hear about Gaza, how many civilians are really caught in the crossfire, and what each side says about the human cost of this conflict. If you want an honest, thoughtful look at the ongoing Israel-Palestine crisis, especially the toll on innocent people in Gaza and the West Bank, stick around. This isn't just politics, it's about real lives, urgent questions of justice, and the desperate hope for peace. I'll be sharing my thoughts too, so let's dive in together.
Piers, you seem to be a little obsessed with this
Yeah,
counting
I'm
of
obsessed with
numbers.
how many civilians are being killed.
All right, let's say we take the so-called Gaza Health Ministry's numbers, the corrected version. Do you remember what that is now?
That was the number of people they could actually put a name to, right?
The corrected
They could put a name
version.
to.
So we went
And you think
from
that's the total number of civilians killed?
The last time I was on your show, you had Barghouti saying that there was 40, 50, 60,000 dead. Let's just add numbers on, because why not? Everybody will believe you anyway. And then we had the corrected version of the numbers, which went down to about 22, 24,000.
They were the names of people. They were the ones they could put a name to. They don't know how many people are lying in rubble still. They've no idea. People have been killed.
We know how many.
People have been killed in gigantic numbers week in, week out. You know that, and I know that. I've interviewed doctors. I've interviewed doctors in hospitals saying 500 people have been brought in every single day. But what staggers me, Fleur, what staggers me is that you, like the government spokesman I interviewed, you are certain you know exactly how many terrorists you're killing, but you've no idea how many civilians. Let me bring you Wajahat.
We know how big the army. We know how big. Let me finish.
No, I'm going to come to Wajahat. I've given you a chance to respond.
When Al-Shifa Hospital
can't just keep talking.
When Al-Shifa Hospital was bombed by the Palestinians,
we're not going back again to that.
They said there were 500 dead. The next day, when it turned out to be a Hamas rocket, there were 26 dead.
I know.
Think about that every time you believe the numbers.
Yeah. Let me come to Wajahat. This is my problem with when I get into numbers with the Israeli side, is that they seem to be utterly emphatic in their knowledge of how many terrorists they're killing, but no idea how many civilians, and almost don't care. It's the fog of war. Churchill didn't count.
The fog of war was used by the UN, not us. When they were
asking Wajahat. Sorry,
when they were justifying the wrong
numbers. You could let him speak,
that
please.
That was their expression.
Let him speak, please. Wajahat.
It's not that they almost don't care, Piers. It's that they don't care. And we know that the number is probably higher than 36,000 people killed. You and I have eyes. The world has eyes. We have seen Rafah get bombed. We have seen the charred bodies. We have seen Israel bomb churches, mosques, refugee camps. We have seen Israel kill the staff of World Central Kitchen and then say, oops. We have seen Israel occupy Palestinians in the West Bank. There's no Hamas in the West Bank. What's Israel's excuse for killing over 500 people in the West Bank? With Ben-Gvir handing out, excuse me, with Ben-Gvir handing out weapons to extremist settlers. Listen, of course you know, but to you, can I just say, but to you, Hamas doesn't control the West Bank. Facts, please. But to you, every Palestinian is a terrorist. You don't care about the women. You don't care about the children. You don't care about the majority of people that have been killed are civilians. To you, it's all terrorists.
You don't know anything. You just accuse
I can judge you by. Can I just finish? I let you. I didn't say a word.
Can you let him finish his point?
I didn't say a word.
Keep talking over him, Fleur. Let him finish his point.
He's lying.
First of all,
well, he listened to you. So let him speak.
This is what I say is she represents the general psychopathy of the Israeli government, where they come on television and they think the rest of the world actually is like them, that they don't see Palestinians as humans, and they say these talking points. And Piers, sometimes when you invite me to debate, I sit here and go, I don't have to say a word, because they're undermining themselves and their own cause in front of the global stage right now. I mean, the fact that she knows, but like somehow magically they're all terrorists, but when you ask them repeatedly, well, how can you not know how many civilians there are? And they say, well, we don't know. What civilians? And then she goes to World War II, compares Palestinian moms and children to Germans, to Nazis. Okay, fine. Go for it.
You're talking about mosques, and you're talking about churches, and you're talking about schools, and you fail to mention that that's exactly where Hamas hide. Not just that, they build mosques on top of tunnels, on top of terrorist installations. You want to ignore the fact that Hamas are cynically using their own people. They use their people as a defense strategy. They're using our hostages
so
as
Israel
a defense
bombs
strategy.
Rafah and kills kids? So Israel bombs World Central Kitchen staff?
Israel bombed 2 terrorists. A kilometer away, there was a fire that was made by munitions that were in a place that they shouldn't have been. And
actually, you don't know all that. You don't know that. That's not been established as fact.
There is an ongoing investigation.
Sorry, that's
right
not.
now,
sorry.
But all I know is
again to correct you, Fleur. That has not.
You don't know what happened either.
No, nor do you. So you accept you don't.
We are at the moment investigating.
Sorry, you just accepted you don't.
We know that it was a kilometer away from where
you just said you didn't know what happened either. In other words, nor do you.
No, we are doing an investigation.
Right, it's not concluded. So how can you say these things are facts?
And then
the only fact.
Piers can ask them why did Netanyahu apologize?
If I may finish, Fleur. If I may finish, the only fact is that 45 innocent people in the refugee camps were killed at the same time as apparently 2 Hamas terrorists. I don't call that a very good percentage, do you?
No, but it wasn't a strategy, and it is not what
But when you bomb a refugee camp, that is a strategy. When you bomb a refugee camp, it is a strategy.
We did not bomb a refugee camp. We bombed 2
who are in a refugee camp.
They were a kilometer away from the humanitarian
zone. They were
zone.
In a refugee camp.
They were a kilometer away from the humanitarian zone.
In a refugee camp.
Where we moved people in order to put them
in harm's way. You moved them there and then you killed them.
Hamas keeps them in harm's way. When babies were baked in ovens on October 7th, that was a strategy. When Israel tries to weed out the terrorists, and there are unfortunately casualties, it's not a strategy. That is not what we aim to do.
Those casualties are beheaded babies in Rafah.
That really?
Yes, that bomb
really.
dropped in Rafah tent.
I saw a beheaded baby
and babies were beheaded.
It was horrific.
That's what happened in Rafah. Really? And you know why they went to Rafah, Piers?
So, hang on, Fleur, hang on. Fleur, just to be clear, are you denying that there were any video footage of a baby beheaded?
I have not seen anything.
Really?
And I know that the Israeli army would never do anything like that.
No, sorry, the baby's head was blown off.
Oh, okay. Listen, when
it's
there's
killed 36,000 Palestinians.
Oh, well, that's what you say. Apparently, you know the numbers better than the UN and
the fire
the
that
army
raged through that refugee
else.
Camp did that damage to that baby.
Was absolutely, and it was tragic.
But it's going to happen again and again if you bomb people in a refugee camp.
Well, we weren't aiming to bomb people in a refugee camp.
But you are going to kill them if you keep dropping bombs in a refugee camp, aren't you? You're going to kill civilians.
We took almost 1 million people and put them in a humanitarian zone.
How many have you left?
That's why we did.
How many have you left?
Which army in the world is actually warning ahead of time where we're going to be attacking in order to put people out of harm's way that its own authority, its own government puts in harm's way? Nobody's doing that.
Where are they going to run to over a minute? I'm sorry, I have to say something.
Where would they run to?
Where are they going to run to when? Just let me finish.
Maybe somebody should demand Egypt to help out
I've listened to you. Just give me 10 seconds. The Israeli government has bombed Gaza. There's over 1.5 million people displaced. They moved to Rafah for safety. What did Israel do? Cross Biden's red line, the greatest ally, United States, and bombed Rafah. These people, as Piers were saying, were in a safe space. They were in a safe zone, in a refugee camp, and now we have charred bodies and beheaded babies, and Benjamin Netanyahu says, I don't care. No ceasefire. I'm going to continue bombing Rafah. And now you have openly admitted they should go to Egypt. Now, if you want to send them to Egypt, which I know you do because you just said it, that is ethnic cleansing. That is ethnic cleansing. And that is a genocide.
No, why is
that would be a genocide.
That's us. So you're saying that at the moment
because you're bombing them out.
At least that. Okay. All I can say to you is this: Ukraine had a war, and all of the neighboring countries took them in temporarily in order to help them out in a situation where there is bombing going on. Now, Egypt has a border with Rafah, with Gaza. Now, not only are they not helping out, even temporarily, taking people out of harm's way, they've built 3 walls, and it was discovered that 50 tunnels that were smuggling in arms
because it's Israel's responsibility. Israel is the occupying power. Why should Egypt help? Israel should stop killing Palestinians.
We left in 2005.
It is your responsibility.
We left
It is your responsibility. You are the occupying power. Why do you want to kick out Palestinians to Egypt? And by the way, do you think Palestinians will be allowed to return in Netanyahu's Israel, where he says there's no 2 states? Do you think Ben-Gvir and Smotrich will allow these Palestinians that you care so much about, that you're going to move out to Egypt and Jordan? Do you think that the government of Netanyahu, your government, will you allow these refugees to come back? You know, all these hundreds of thousands of refugees that you've allowed to come back over the past 7 years? What would happen? Do you think they really will be allowed to come back to your Israel?
Listen, we never left. We left in 2005, and we pulled out 8,000 people and their businesses and farms not to come back. Why did we do that? Why did we go through all of that trauma?
And you're still occupying.
Pulling out people. No, why are we occupying? Because we tried to stop Iranians from sending arms to Gaza? Another myth, another lie. We left in 2005.
Let me ask you this.
We left the Palestinian leadership to their own devices.
Let me ask you this.
And look what happens.
Let me ask you this.
Look what happens.
Fleur, please stop talking. If I'm asking a question. My question is this. My question is this. If there's no occupation, how is it that at the start of this war, Israel was able to turn off a lot of the water into Gaza, a lot of the food into Gaza, a lot of the energy into Gaza? If you're not an occupying country, how are you able to do that to another country?
A blockade is not an occupation.
What is it?
A blockade is not an occupation.
What is it?
Legally, a blockade is
What is it?
Well, first of all, there was trade going on between Gaza and Israel before October 7th. We gave out 20,000 work permits. People were working all across.
Why are Palestinians not entitled to the same rights as Israelis?
They have their own state.
They don't have the rights of Israelis. Why not?
Because they're not Israelis.
Okay. Well, that's pretty conclusive.
Thank you.
They're not Israelis.
Okay.
We left in
Sometimes,
2005.
you know what?
Look, Piers,
sometimes it's good to shine a light because you get the right answer.
No, let me tell you what light I'm shining. You can't have it both ways. Do you want to be Israeli, or do you want to have your own state? You want to have your own autonomous territory?
I think Palestinians want to have the same.
94%
Palestinians want to have the same rights as Israelis, and I don't see why they shouldn't.
But do they want their own state, or don't they? Do they want to be part of Israel? Do they want a one-state solution, or do they want a two-state solution?
Well, let me ask. Okay, that's a fair enough question.
I'm asking.
That's a fair question. Let me put it to Wajah. What do you want?
What do they want?
Wajah, what do you want at the end of this?
At the end of this, I want justice, I want peace, and I want a pathway towards Palestinian self-determination. I think there has to be an end to the occupation. Israel is occupying Palestinians to its detriment. I want to just say, those who are supporting the war like she is, here's the failure of Netanyahu's war, very quickly. Netanyahu said he wants to destroy Hamas. Hamas is not destroyed. Failure number one. Netanyahu says he wants the hostages back. The family members of the hostages are protesting Netanyahu because they know he doesn't care. Failure number two. He says he wants to make Israel safer. Israel's not safer. He wants to make the region safer. The region's not safer. He wants to help Israel's reputation. Israel's a pariah. Military solutions will not work. People like your guest right now think they could put the boot on the neck of Palestinians, create a symmetry where there is none, occupy people, and people resist that occupation and just die. Like they're just going to die. They're not. If you want an end, if you want peace, stop the occupation and give Palestinians a pathway towards self-determination. And if there should be two states, Piers, riddle me this. Why is Israel expanding settlements in the West Bank? What excuse is it? Please give us the excuse why Israel is occupying the West Bank and expanding settlements.
I couldn't agree more. Fleur, why on earth does Israel think it's a good idea to expand settlements on the West Bank?
Well, first of all, you have to understand the context that Area A and B, which is where 94% of the Palestinians live, are under the PA autonomy. The fact that they haven't developed their own economy, the fact that they don't give people anything, the fact that East Jerusalem...
That's not the question. The question is why expand settlements knowing it is deeply inflammatory and often accompanied by violence? Why?
Because the settlements are not the obstacle to a two-state solution.
Actually, they're one of the major obstacles, actually, yeah.
They're not.
Because if you keep seizing land
they're taking
with
up all the land.
settlers who are violent towards Palestinians, that is an obstacle. Yeah, it is.
What was the obstacle before 1967? The 48 Declaration?
We're not in 1967. We're in 2024.
In 1967, a war was started. In 1967, a war was started in order to destroy Israel. In 1948, a war was started in order to destroy Israel. There wasn't one settlement. So explain to me what you
And
both
in 2024, Benjamin Netanyahu announced he would have 3,000 more settlements in West Bank.
The settlements
Joe Biden said no more settlements.
ridiculously
Netanyahu said 3,000 more settlements.
They shouldn't be happening.
The largest cities and towns in the Palestinian, in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria are all under the autonomy of Mahmoud Abbas, who unfortunately is a corrupt dictator. What I wish for the Palestinian people is that they get the leadership they deserve. They get a Gandhi, they get a Mandela, they get somebody who's not either a kleptocrat or a genocidal maniac.
You know what? Hang on.
You'd kill them.
Hang on.
You'd kill them.
You know what?
No, we wouldn't.
You'd kill them.
Well,
you
know what?
That's not true.
I actually wish that. If I may finish.
Wishing that here in Israel.
If I may finish, I actually agree with you, Fleur. I would like that on both sides. I think Netanyahu is long past his sell-by date. The right-wing hate bangers in his government are past their sell-by date. To get to a two-state solution where people can live peacefully with the same rights and same security and freedoms, you have got to get new leadership on both sides. And that is how we're going to leave.
I wish I could believe Land for Peace would bring us peace, because we really want peace.
Okay, well, one said amen and the other one tried to equivocate. And that's the problem, Fleur. Sometimes you've got to reach an agreement on top-line principles, which is, isn't that what we should all want?
With leaders who care about their people, and I wish that for the Palestinians.
On both sides. I don't care. I don't think Netanyahu and his cabinet right now care about anything but themselves.
We've had many other prime ministers offering everything the Palestinians said they wanted, and they rejected
We're going to leave it there. Fleur Hassan Nahum, thank you very much. Wahaji Ali, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This debate really shows how complicated and painful the truth gets when war is involved. Behind all the politics, slogans, and numbers, there are real people, Palestinian civilians trapped in a never-ending cycle of violence and occupation. If we truly want peace, it has to start with seeing their humanity and pushing for an end to the occupation and all of this violence. Justice, rights, and self-determination for Palestinians have to be part of the solution. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the Israel-Palestine conflict with Piers Morgan, Wajahat Ali, and Fleur Hassan Nahum in the Rafah debate. I want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you want more honest conversations on the big issues shaping our world, and I'll catch you in the next video.